Hey, it's Sparky, Fifer, 1250 AM, The Fan, beautiful Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It's been a while. We had a week last week. Ryan Horvat was on vacation. And to be honest, there was nothing really going on with the Packers. So instead of me doing it by myself, I was like, I'll take a vacation from doing the Kurt Along podcast as well. I did do the Green and Growing podcast with Nathan Marzi. I did those podcasts last week, but took a week off from the Packers. We are back. Ryan Horvat is back from his vacation, rested. And ready to rock and roll on BetMGM tonight throughout the week this week. How was your time off? You went back home, didn't you? Was that your time off?
Yeah, ended up going back home. It was all right. Spoiler alert, saw Dave Matthews 2 more times, so now I'm up to 30.
You're a groupie, is what you are.
That was pretty fun. Saw a bunch of family, saw a bunch of friends back home. I'm actually gonna go here next Saturday. Actually, I'm gonna go see him for the 31st time. I'm going to bring my son this time, though.
At what point do you reach stalker level, Horvat? That's what I'd like to know. At what point are you officially a stalker? I mean, you got to be getting close.
Well, the problem is, so I didn't go to T-Swift, and there's no other shows that I really want to see coming up this summer. It's just Dave Matthews, so just got to continue to go see him. I'm a big Radiohead fan, but they only tour every once in a while. I'm not a stalker. Like I said, it had been almost a decade since I'd seen him last, but I had such a good time. And he's in all these great locations. He was about 40 minutes away from my house in Maryland. And then you got to go to Northerly Island, as you could tell.
I thought you said Ireland for a second. I was like, you flew to Ireland to see this dude?
When I told my wife that that's where I was going to head, she was like, Ireland, huh? That would have been a hell of a show. But no, just Chicago. But right on the water. It was a good time.
Really? I've never heard of that. I mean, I've been to, Tinley Park? I saw Rascal Flatts at Tinley Park and Sheryl Crow. And who was the other one there? I don't know. They were all a part of one ticket. So I've been to Tinley Park and seen a show there. I never heard of this other place you're talking about, though.
My first concert ever was actually in Tinley Park. I went and saw the Spin Doctors, the Gin Blossoms, and Cracker. It was all one show. My aunt took me. It was a good time, actually. That was the first concert I ever attended. I was like 8 years old. So I figured my son, he's 9 years old. This will be a good one. Although this won't be his first concert. This will just be his first Dave concert. We took him to see the Chili Peppers.
Is he one of those kids that loves everything that dad loves? Or is he one of those kids that kind of goes against dad and everything?
No, I mean, he likes certain things. I'll tell you this, if it involves...
We'll get to the Packers, by the way. This is a Ryan Horvat update. Sorry.
If it involves spending money, then he's all in. He won't sit and watch an entire baseball game, but he'll go to a baseball game and have a good time. He doesn't root against the teams I like. He's into the Packers.
Nice.
Unfortunately, he is into the Cubs. I told him when we were in Milwaukee. Well, I told him when we were in Milwaukee, I said you could root for the Brewers or you could root for the Cubs, and he chose to go with us. So I think if anything, he likes the same things that I like. But the toughest thing to get him into right now is baseball. Into actually watching the game at home, and I don't blame him. But at the same time, I think it's better than ever. And the games have been flying by this season. They're all 2 hours and 20 minutes. You know.
I think a lot of young stars coming up through the major leagues right now, too. Just look at the Reds. Let's talk about the Green Bay Packers. I want to get into this. Jacob Westendorf, who's been on this podcast before, got a little bit, I'd say it's a pretty big promotion, going to work with Bill Huber over at SI.com and writing, just simply covering Packers, him and Bill Huber. And one of his first pieces, 5 Reasons to Believe in the 2023 Packers. And again, very, very happy for Jacob Westendorf. So let's go through these and see if Ryan Horvat, who I don't know if you've been overly optimistic or overly pessimistic. I feel like there's been shows where you've been a little negative, and then there's been shows where you've been a little positive. So I'd like to say you kind of played it right down the middle for the most part if we combine everything. I don't think you've really fallen on one side of the fence or the other. The Rodgers not being here thing obviously irritates you, but outside of that, I think you've been fairly positive, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was a little worried about this team coming into the year last season. I mean, I liked the defense. I thought I liked the defense, but losing Devontae, trading him away, I thought was just going to be a huge loss, and then replacing him with the corpse of Sammy Watkins and a bunch of rookies who I knew Rodgers wasn't going to trust until week 8. I wasn't really enthused last season. This season, it's kind of the same, although at least last year you had Rodgers, you had what we thought was going to be a top 10 defense. This year, it's tough to get too excited, I guess, just because there's no Super Bowl expectations, in my opinion.
Agreed.
But also, there's the great unknown. Is Jordan Love any good? Is Matt LaFleur any good? So I'm kind of excited. It was time for a new era. It was time for Rodgers to move on. It's like when two people just fall out of love and they're just staying together for the kids, and then the kids go away maybe to college and it's time for them to go their separate ways. That was Rodgers and the Packers. And so, I'm excited. I don't know how optimistic I am for their playoff chances or Super Bowl chances, but I can't wait to see what this looks like and if Jordan Love's the guy or not.
I agree. All right, so here's what he's got down here. Elite ground game is one of them. Jones has averaged 5.1 yards per carry since entering the NFL in 2017, ran for more than 1,100 yards last season, caught an additional 59 passes. Some of the best Packers games have come under LaFleur, have come when Jones was the focal point of the offense. Do you think this is one of the reasons to believe in the Packers with him and A.J. Dillon in the backfield?
Yeah, I think so, because like the LaFleur offense was always supposed to be this offense where, both guys were going to get 12 to 15 carries. Now it would be, impossible to get them both 20 touches per game. Maybe this season you're able to get them closer to that number, but I am optimistic about that. The only thing that concerns me a little bit is the play calling. Like, maybe now that Rodgers is gone, we see more Aaron Jones, but how many times last season, was it that, or the season before really, where Aaron Jones would have 4 or 5 touches only going into the half. And then, Matt LaFleur would be handed the box score after the game. He'd see he only had 8 to 10 touches. He'd blame it on himself. So as long as Aaron Jones actually touches the football, I think there's reason to be optimistic and be excited. With A.J. Dillon, this is a huge year, man. This is like a make it or break it season for A.J. Dillon. So I'm excited, but also, you know how I feel about A.J. Dillon. I wasn't a huge fan of the pick in the second round, to be honest. But yeah, I think that if both guys like actually get to touch the football enough, if the offensive line stays healthy, I think that's one reason for sure.
That's the thing, though. We talk about Jones and Dillon, and everybody obviously wants to talk about Aaron Jones. And Aaron Jones essentially took a pay cut to stay here for 1 year, right? And now you see guys that are sitting out there like Dalvin Cook, who still doesn't have a deal, and he's probably going to go to Miami or New England or wherever, but he's not going to get the money he thought he was going to get. He played hardball with Minnesota. He probably could have stayed in Minnesota had he agreed to take a pay cut. He wouldn't be out there looking for a job right now, but he overplayed his hand. Aaron Jones was smart enough to realize, dude, I'm not going to get $10 million on the open market if I go out there. There's no way. So fine, yeah, I'll take a pay cut. I'll stay here and play and put myself in a position in this offense to still put up big numbers, obviously going forward. But in this offense, which we don't really know yet, to be honest with you, but in this offense, are they more important than they are in, say, Kansas City or some of these other offenses as far as the running back position goes? When you don't have a Hall of Fame quarterback, you have young dudes at wide receiver and tight end. Does more of the weight of the world kind of fall on those two doing a really, really good job at what they do, more so than maybe other offenses at this point?
Well, I think the other thing is like just the way that they use Aaron Jones or have used them the last couple of years. He's one of their better route runners and pass catchers. He needs to stop fumbling in big moments.
Yes.
But that's the other thing is, they have different skill sets where Aaron Jones is your speed back. Even though he's getting a little bit older, he really hasn't lost, how explosive he is yet. And then A.J. Dillon's supposed to be this power back, but nobody knew how good of a pass catcher he was because at Boston College, they just never threw him the ball out of the backfield. But, I think they're way more important, like you said, with a young quarterback, man, especially because that'll open things up down the field. You have a guy like Christian Watson who you can move all around the field, your speed guy. We'll see. I think Romeo Doubs is going to be wide receiver number 1. I worry about Christian Watson staying healthy, and I'm really excited about Jaden Reed as another deep threat. But when you're able to open up those guys down the field with a solid run game, yeah, I think that they're way more important. I think like this backfield and then the backfield in Atlanta, probably the most important in the NFC, right?
Great.
Because we still have no idea what the hell Desmond Ridder is.
Yep.
But you would expect Bijan Robinson to be the real deal since they used the top 5 pick on him.
And they have less at wide receiver and tight end than the Packers do. Kyle Pitts, but they didn't really use Pitts last year like they should have.
Yeah, I like Drake London and I like Kyle Pitts, but I don't know if he's this red zone threat that we ever think he's going to be. Maybe it's just because he's never really had a quarterback. Like he's had Marcus Mariota and Matt Ryan towards the end of his career, right? Like that's really it. And so maybe this is the year finally, but I could tell you because I've owned him in fantasy football the last 3 years. But
look at Julio Jones. He never had the touchdowns he should have had in his career either.
That was always the same thing, right? Even when he stayed healthy, he's this big 6'5", 250-pound beast, and they can never get him the ball in the red zone. It never made any sense.
Yep.
And yet we would still draft him every single year in fantasy.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I would say that that's probably, if not the most important backfield, it's probably the second in the NFC at least.
No doubt. Second one here from Jacob Westendorf. Health of the offensive line. And I think that's key. And he goes back to the MVP season of 2014. Bakhtiari, Sidden, Corey Linsley, TJ Lang, and Brian Bulaga started 15 of 16 games together that season, with only Bulaga missing the same. Obviously, last year was a much, much different story with the entire rigmarole of changing the offensive line as guys couldn't stay healthy. But if you look at this offensive line right now, and let's go over it, right? So Bakhtiari at left tackle, Jenkins at left guard. We still think it's Myers at center, even though I think that could change. I'm not convinced considering they're trying everybody at center, it sounds like, in training camp. So that's who goes there. Tunion's at right guard, and for the time being, Yash is at right tackle. So that's your starting five, I think. And then Zach Tom, where does he fit in? Does he end up becoming the starting center? Does he end up, playing guard or right tackle? We'll have to wait and see. But those six, I think, are the ones in play. If healthy, how good is this line, Ryan Horvat?
I mean, I think that it's one of the better offensive lines, if healthy, just because you have two All-Pros, right? You have Elton Jenkins, who, I mean, yeah, he wasn't himself last year, but we didn't really expect him to be himself last year. He
got better once they moved him back to guard from tackle, though.
Right. Once he went back to his natural position. Also, though, like how much of that had to do with he also just got healthier. I mean, like it's not only a big dude coming off a big knee injury, but it's also he's got to get himself back into playing shape, after pretty much sitting on his ass for like 6 to 7 months.
I agree.
More than that, actually. Yeah, about that time frame. And then Bakhtiari. I mean, the problem with Bakhtiari is, man, when he's on the field, he's still one of the better tackles in the entire league. But the problem is he going to be able to complete 4 quarters every single week? Because he still hasn't proven that he's been able to do that. Towards the end of the season, yeah. Also, how motivated is he this season to play with this team? Like every time I go on social media, it's him talking about politics or him and Rodgers going back and forth. I just hope that he wants to be part of this rebuild on the fly, whatever you want to call it. But, man, I'm super excited about the offensive line. My only concern, same concern I've had really since Corey Linsley's left, is the center position. Which is why I always wanted Corey Linsley to come back. But, again, like they made the right decision like they always do, not signing those guys to that last deal, those offensive linemen.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, I don't think they're necessarily convinced Myers is the guy either when everybody that gets brought up that's not starting gets told, oh, we're going to try you at center. Oh, we're going to try you at center. If I'm Myers, I'm like, this is not good for me because everybody in this locker room that's not a starter, they're trying at my position. This is not good. So I hope he plays well in training camp, holds them off, and is able to hold on to that starting job. But I think they really want Zach Tom to start. So we'll see how that all goes. Okay, so number 3 on this list, Christian Watson is the other one. And you already talked about earlier about his ability to stay healthy. But is it? Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like when we talk about pressure on the running backs to go do their job really well, I feel like there's pressure on Christian Watson to be the true number 1 wide receiver in this offense and be the big playmaking wide receiver that they have to have in order for this thing to work. He's not Devontae Adams, but they need somebody to kind of blow the top off a little bit and be a threat to try and roll coverage to him at some point during the course of next year.
Yeah, I want to see them, use him different ways as well. Like use him on the end around, move him around a little bit, use him in the slot, use him on the outside because, I mean, he's big, he's tall, but he's obviously explosive. He's got to stay healthy. But I think in a perfect world, Romeo Doubs is your possession wide receiver. He's the 100 reception guy. He's kind of like the Wes Welker. And then you have Christian Watson's kind of like the Randy Moss guy that could take the top off the defense. I just think that it would probably be impossible for him to be like 115, 120 reception guy just because he's probably going to get so much attention. But man, like if Doubs could be your underneath guy, and you also have Reed, and then you have these tight ends. Like we don't know who's going to take over that room, but you have DeGuara and then you have the 2 rookies. So I'm really excited about Watson and what he could possibly be. I mean, we have no idea what his ceiling is. He's just got to stay healthy. That's the only thing. And
I mean, realistically, I mean, you know more about Reed, obviously. I mean, I've seen him play against the Badgers, but
yeah,
Reed is probably not that guy. Doubs is probably not that guy. They're both probably really good 2s or 3s to a dominant 1. And that's why I feel like there's more pressure on Watson because I don't feel like there's pressure on either one of those other two guys to go be the guy. But I feel like everybody's looking at Watson, expecting him to be the guy. And if he's not, if he gets a case of the drops or whatever, or can't stay healthy, that really, I think, screws up things for how Matt LaFleur probably envisions this offense playing going forward.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. See, here's the thing. I mean, like the good thing about that wide receiver room is we have no idea who the guy is, because the first 8 weeks of the season, we thought it was Romeo Doubs, right? And then Christian Watson, I mean, especially if you were a fantasy owner, I mean, I had him on my team and he was sitting on my bench, and then I was getting all these offers for him, and he looked like one of the better, I'm not talking like rookies. And I mean, that's a stacked rookie class, because you had Garrett Wilson, you have Chris Olave, who might even be better than Garrett Wilson, to be honest with you. We still have no idea how good Jameson Williams is going to be if he ever gets on the field. But man, I mean, the ceiling for Christian Watson is so high. But again, like, we don't know, because Romeo Doubs really looked like he was that dude the first like I'll say like the first like 3-4 weeks of the season, because like you said, man, Christian Watson had that huge drop first play of the season, and then Dobbs looked like he was going to be the guy, but then he was in Rodgers' doghouse, so I felt like he just lost a lot of confidence. You know what I'm saying? But maybe now with Jordan Love, and they seem to have a great relationship, you know, maybe he'll find his groove back. So that's what I'm excited about in this room. Like, we have no idea. Like, we have no idea about any of these guys.
This one here, I completely 1,000% disagree with Jacob Westendorf, because the next one is talented defense. Okay, so let's have the conversation. Are they really a talented defense? Let's just really talk about this for a second. You have two unproven guys that we don't know of. They've only played 1 year in White and Walker. I think Walker could be a beast, but either way, it's only 1 year. And neither one were real beastly necessarily. Flashes, yes. Beastly, no. Jair Alexander, that's not debatable. He's a stud. Okay, fine. Got you. Kenny Clark, I don't know, man. Been kind of inconsistent to me the last couple of years. I don't know if we can go where he was 3-4 years ago necessarily with how he's played. And then who? After that? Rasul Douglas? No. Safeties? Absolutely not. Devondre Campbell had a year where he was all pro. And after that, I said, okay, well, don't think that's probably going to happen again. And maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but I'm not sure that's the guy. And there's nobody else in the defensive line. So I feel like we all want to say, oh, it's so talented because we drafted Stokes in the first round and we drafted this guy, we drafted that guy. Yeah. And then we all want to blame the defensive coordinator because it doesn't work out. And we have all these first round picks invested. Maybe the first round picks just aren't as good as we all thought they were to begin with.
You know, I'll actually stick up for the defense, even though it was a dumpster fire last year. And I'll just say this, like, I think that what he's saying is, again, the ceiling's pretty high for this defense still, just because look at all the first round picks that you spent on this defense. Yes. You have Jair Alexander, who, when right, and again, we got to remember, like, a lot of these guys, some of these guys, I should say, were coming off of injuries. Stokes is going to be coming off an injury. Hopefully, you know, he'll be all right. I saw he played in the softball game, right? So he should
be. But he didn't play well his second year. His best year was his rookie year.
Right. Like, nobody was really playing well, to be honest with you. I think Jair will have a bounce back year. Kenny Clark, we'll see, you know, but if he plays, you know, up to his pay grade, if he plays the way that he's being paid, I mean, he's being, you know, he's one of the better, you know, defensive linemen in the league. We'll see what Van Ness is. I didn't love the pick, but, you know, I mean, they're going to be able to move him around, use him different ways. If Rashawn Gary comes back and is the same player, I'm really excited about
Rashawn Gary. I forgot about. You're right. So Rashawn Gary and Jair Alexander, those are the two true studs of this defense. But again, we don't know how long Gary's going to be out either. So,
well, that's the thing, man. Like Rashawn Gary, I mean, he's the best player on this defense, but he's got to be healthy.
Yep. No, I totally agree. So let me ask you this: if the Packers drafted first-round offensive players for the next 4 years, are we going to call it a talented offense automatically because you draft first-round picks into that offense? Or do you actually have to see the talent actually play out before we say it's a talented offense? Because I feel like what's happening is, well, they wasted a lot of first-round picks, and it's not working, but they're really talented, but it's on Joe Barry. And he says Joe Barry's coaching for his job. You and I both agree. I said, if it's a crap defense after the first 5 weeks, fire his butt. Go get Leslie Frazier, make him the defensive coordinator for the rest of the year and move on. But this whole using the word talented, I think, is what drives me crazy because I don't know if I'm really convinced that they're all that talented outside of Rashawn Gary and Jair Alexander.
I mean, look, they played much better the final 5 weeks of the season. Granted, look at the quarterbacks they were facing. It was Kirk Cousins at Lambeau Field in a crappy weather game. You had Baker Mayfield. You had
who just got to his team.
Justin Fields. I mean, then, Jared Goff didn't really do anything too crazy to beat him. I mean, but you go back like the year before that, like the defense played good enough to beat San Francisco in the playoffs. The offense just didn't do their job. And I think the pieces are there. But again, I'm not a big Joe Barry fan. But who knows, man? Like you said, he's coaching for his job. If these guys could play, the way that we thought that they were last year going into the season, maybe they'll be all right. I don't know.
Now, the other one he brings up, his fifth one of why to believe in the Packers from Jacob Westendorf, SI.com, is Keyshawn Nixon. I ask you, was that lightning in a bottle with Keyshawn Nixon last year, or is this something to really believe in going forward?
It's a tough question, man, just because, I mean, if he's the real deal, that's huge, especially with a young quarterback. You got to get hopefully you got a solid kicker going into the season. But if you're able to flip the field like that, I mean, look how big that was for the offense when you had a Hall of Fame quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. Now think of how much bigger that would be when you have a young quarterback. You have, these two stud running backs in Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. So hopefully he's the real deal. I have to kind of see it to believe it, but I'm excited about it because, man, like that's the reason they were playing so well the second half of the season and should have snuck into the playoffs. But man, I mean, I got to see it to believe it. Just because, like, when's the last time you were that excited to watch a guy return kicks, return punts? Devin Hester?
He brings up Devin Hester. And Jacob Westendorf is in that piece, yes.
Yeah. I mean, guys, we'll see. Teams for some reason last season, you could try to kick away from him, obviously. But yeah, man, if he's able to do that again, that's going to be huge for this offense. Especially if the defense actually, going back to that last question, especially if the defense actually, like, they don't have to be a top 5, top 10. Well, I'll say they have to be like a top 10, top 15 defense if this is going to be a playoff team that wants to win a playoff game. But I think they could win like 9 to 10 games being a top 15, top 20 defense if they have a really good offense. We got to wait and see, though.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, so the next topic I want to get into is salary cap situation. Bill Huber wrote a piece off of this, and that was coming off of a piece from Pro Football Focus that was written analyzing all the teams' different salary cap situations over a 3-year period by Brad Spielberger and from Pro Football Focus and overthecap.com. The Packers ranked 22nd. What's worse, in the NFC North, the Bears are 4th, Lions 5th, and the Vikings 6th. And as Spielberg explains, it's not all necessarily all bad because of what's going on. So here's some of what was written here. Top total prorated money is the amount of guaranteed bonus money on the cap over the next 3 years. As Spielberger puts it in his story, these amounts are truly sunk costs on the cap because they can't be changed via releases or restructures. That money becomes truly problematic in cases like Rodgers, who counts $40.31 million against this year's cap, and safety Adrian Amos, who counts $7.95 million against this year's cap, even while both will be playing for the Jets. After a few years of kicking the cap down the road to contract restructures, the Packers rank 27th in that category at this point. So you put all these figures together, Packers cap outlook for the 2023 through 2025 season ranks 22nd in the National Football League at this point. Now, when Rodgers comes completely off the books for next offseason, the Packers will have $20.7 million of available cap space for 2024. $20 million is pretty good. You might be able to do something with that if you don't sign guys to extensions, obviously. And the Packers move on from David Bakhtiari, which I think you and I both believe they will after this year. That's another $21.5 million off the books, and that would move them up to 17th in the league as far as salary cap space goes. So quickly here, that means, if I'm doing my math right, $42 million in available cap space then, if they move on from Bakhtiari in the offseason, plus Rodgers' number comes off the book as well. As he puts it here, Spielberger, quote, Green Bay got out ahead of the inevitable post-Rodgers rebuild, saving themselves over $100 million in 23-24, clearing significant cap space through 25. The Packers can now continue to extend core players like Rashawn Gary and others while keeping Jordan Love on a cheap contract for the next 2 seasons because they signed him to that 1-year extension. was kicking the can down the road the last 3 years. Now, knowing how this all played out, was it still the right move by Brian Gutekunst doing what he did?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they won 13 games, 3 consecutive seasons. They were in the NFC title game. They probably should have beat Tampa Bay. If you go back and you watch that game, and Kevin King isn't just an absolute disaster, and they get the right calls. I mean, I hate to be that guy, but I mean, Tampa's corners were holding all game, and then they call Kevin King on the same thing in the biggest moment of the game. Then again, Rodgers didn't do anything with the football, like when the defense gave it to him 3 times in the second half. But no, I think that was the right decision, man, because, I mean, if you have a Tom Brady, you have an Aaron Rodgers, you have to go all in. That's what we ask as fans. We would, complain if they didn't go all in. Odell Beckham Jr. at the trade deadline.
Time out.
What tried to do, man? What?
Time out.
What?
I think if you took a poll on Twitter, do you think Brian Gutekunst went all in for Aaron Rodgers? How many people do you think say yes?
I mean, I'm the biggest, I guess you could call me a Goot hater and Rodgers apologist there is. Sure. And I do think that I don't know, man. I mean, they could have traded up for Justin Jefferson, but could they have? I don't know, man. They could have drafted T. Higgins, I know, over Jordan Love.
Yes.
I'm going to say they didn't go all in for Aaron Rodgers, but I do think Goot went all in for the Green Bay Packers. I don't think that I think that he looked at how Ted drafted his receivers, and let's be honest, like they hit on most of those guys. Christian Watson looks to be really good. We think Dobbs is going to be a solid player. Devontae was a solid player. Jordy, Greg Jennings, all these guys, none of those guys were first round picks. So you could say there's the draft thing, but I mean, he went all in for bringing back Devondre Campbell, Rasul Douglas. They wanted to bring in Odell Beckham Jr. He chose to go play with the Rams. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that's the problem. Like, we don't really know. It's easy to just complain because the result was they didn't win another Super Bowl for Rodgers. But, every year around the trade deadline, it would be, it's down to Odell Beckham, or it's down to, the Packers and the Rams, and I'm just using his name, but it was, I don't know. I'd say he went all in to win a Super Bowl. I don't know if he went all in for Rodgers, though. I think he made the right decision, at least trying to win, though, with a Hall of Fame, All-Pro, MVP quarterback. So, and now, I don't even think they're in that bad of a position, to be honest, man. And I do think they move on from Bakhtiari because that's what the Packers always do with offensive linemen, whether it's Josh Sitton, TJ Lang. Bakhtiari is going to be another year older. I know this is kind of a different situation because he's not going to be a free agent, but, or who knows, man, maybe this team wins 11 games and maybe then you want Bakhtiari back. Maybe he's having fun. He's rejuvenated. He's healthy. He's one of the best tackles in the league and they're winning with him and you want to protect your young quarterback. Jordan Love looks good. They build a relationship. Jordan Love's like, I don't want Bach going anywhere. I think that there's just like so much unknown that it's tough to predict going into the season because we have no idea. Jordan Love could be Patrick Mahomes. Jordan Love could be Joey Harrington.
Thanks. That was you didn't need to drop Joey Harrington for God's sakes.
I was trying to think of a disaster.
Yeah, this is the thing though. So Bakhtiari, we get to next offseason, right? And then it's trade Bakhtiari, release Bakhtiari, whatever you're going to do with Bakhtiari. But it's going to be before the draft because in the National Football League, the free agency and the trademark and all that opens up, the league year opens up prior to the draft by a month and a half prior to the draft or whatever it is. So you're not going to know, is there going to be a left tackle that's going to get to you in the first round if you let Bakhtiari go? Now you're going to have $47 million in cap space. So then the decision is by Goot is, okay, can Zach Tom play left tackle? Do we try Yash at left tackle? Can Elton Jenkins play left tackle? Do I think I can convince somebody to come play with Jordan Love that's a premier left tackle that I want to pay money to? And is that guy even out there? Because face facts, if you're a premier left tackle and you're in your 20s, you're not being let go by your team. They're going to franchise tag you. They're not letting you ever hit the open market. So odds are whoever is out there, more than likely, is an older player towards the end of their career that you're going to use as a stopgap until you can find the next premier left tackle to a quarterback going into his second year as a starter. I mean, that is a huge roll of the dice if you decide to move on from David Bakhtiari.
Dude, that's why every year teams like Super Bowl contending teams, playoff contending teams are calling up these like 35, 36-year-old retired left tackles.
Yes.
Just to see if they want to come back and play. So that's the thing, though. Like, if this is just a full rebuild, Jordan Love doesn't look very good. The defense is still a disaster. Joe Barry gets fired. Then all of a sudden LaFleur's maybe coaching for his job next year. and on the hot seat, which is crazy because, again, he's coached in 2 NFC championship games. Last year was his worst season, and he still won. He won 7 games, but he won 13 games 3 consecutive years. But he'll be on the hot seat. Maybe not just because it's Green Bay, and that's Goot's guy, so maybe he won't be on the hot seat. But yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Like, who else are you going to draft that's any better, or who else are you going to find that's any better?
I mean, unless you're top 5. If you're top 5 in the draft, then I feel confident that maybe you can get left tackle. And I don't even know what the draft looks like next year. I know the quarterbacks at the top. We know Harrison Jr. from Ohio State. We know those guys are probably the top 3. May, Caleb Williams, and Harrison Jr. more than likely are 3 of the top 5, maybe the top 3. But after that, as far as how many good left tackles are in next year's draft, couldn't tell you. I have no idea.
Actually, let me take back everything I said because I'm going back to what I've been saying the last 3 months here since we've been doing the podcast, during after the season, since they've officially moved on from Aaron Rodgers. If it's a disaster and you have a top 3 pick, I don't want a left tackle to replace David Bakhtiari.
Quarterback.
Let Bakhtiari go. I want Caleb Williams or Drake May. Like, if this doesn't look good, I know it's year 1 for Jordan Love, but dude, it's not year 1 for Jordan Love. You know what I mean? Like, year 1
depends how they lose, though.
I saw somebody say that they're going to give Jordan Love a free pass for this season because Aaron Rodgers only won 6 games his first year in Green Bay. Rodgers won 6 games because the defense stunk, but
and he had veteran wide receivers, which
touchdown passes,
Love doesn't have.
28 touchdown passes, 12 picks, and 4,000 yards, I believe.
But he was in a much better situation, Ryan. He was in a much better situation. He had veteran wide receivers. He doesn't have what he's got to work with here. He was never set up with this situation until last year with the inexperience he's got.
Numbers, I don't need 28 touchdown passes, 12 picks. I can't have that final year at Utah State, man. I can't
No. But what I'm saying is,
picks.
Right, but let's say the Packers defense gives up 27 points a game. Yeah. Right. And he throws for 3,500 yards and they have 5 or 6 wins because their defense is getting slaughtered. But he throws up good numbers. I agree with you. I don't think left tackle either. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. If I can get Marvin Harrison Jr., I think the stud wide receiver give up more help. To hell with the defense. I'm just going to draft more offense at that point. But
yeah, man. Like, if you have a top pick, you got to go offense next year. I completely agree.
Ryan Horvat, C. Sparky, Fifer, BetMGM tonight with Ryan Horvat. Check him out weeknights, Trista Crick and Nick Ashu. And you can check me out, 1250 amthefan.com as well as the Green and Growing Podcast, Talking Bucks. Download it on your Odyssey app, or if you download your favorite podcast, check it out on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page as well. Ryan Horvat, I thank you, my friend. You enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you.